Hi, everyone. Bill Rentschler in the 1011 Now streaming studio. It's time for our once-a-month chat with Lincoln Transportation and Utilities, what we like to fondly call LNK Streets and Utility Beats. And really excited today to have David McClintock from LTU, Senior Engineer within the Traffic Division. An interesting topic today, David, the new Red Arrow Law that went into effect last week in Lincoln. Mm-hmm. I just told you I feel a little bad working in the news business. I feel like I should have known about this, but I didn't know really about it until we kind of did the story last week. And so it's already in effect right now.
Yes, it is, as of July 19th.
So can you kind of just first, I guess, give us a little bit of background, a little bit on yourself, kind of where you're from and how long you've been here with LTU?
Sure. So I'm a senior engineer in LTU Traffic Engineering. I've been in that position for a little under 3 years. Then I have some consulting experience prior to that. So my role as a senior engineer is to promote and advocate for standards, guidelines, and best practices that promote our public safety on our transportation network, whether you're a cyclist, a driver, pedestrian, kind of all of the above.
I think a lot of people probably take for granted how much work and planning and tinkering and figuring things out, running just streets can be. Because you're right, you gotta make room for, again, all the people in the vehicles, but then people who are riding their bikes, pedestrians, crosswalks, turn signals, turn lanes, how many lanes you're gonna have, and all the rest of it. I can imagine you can kind of pull your hair out a little bit trying to get it all straight.
There is a lot there, and I like to say that if I'm doing my job well, you won't notice it. The designs, your commute, your movement will be very intuitive. Mm-hmm. And in my opinion, when you have intuitive roadways, networks, transportation systems, intuitive systems create predictable behavior. Mm-hmm. And out of that predictable behavior, that's where you get safe driving, safe networks.
And I imagine you guys, like you just said, you probably really like predictable.
I am an engineer, so yes, there's a bit of personality with that. Yes, I have regimens and I have things that I like, but then, there's always things that are changing. Whether it's a law, whether it's a national standard, whether it's a new research that's come to market. So there's a bit of both. Kind
of like the roundabouts.
Yes, that was a big push.
Roundabouts, and now there's the big push.
Yep.
Of roundabouts.
Yep.
All right. So again, we already said it, or you already said it, but this new law went into effect last week. It was a week ago tomorrow. So what is this new law? What does it say? What does it mean for drivers here in Lincoln?
Yeah, so the new Nebraska statute, in simplest form, defines what a red arrow means and what should a driver do should they encounter one. So very, very high level. The red arrow is being implemented to better inform drivers of whether or not it is permissible to turn on red, whether it's a right turn on red or a left turn on red. And so the clarification is that most drivers are going to be familiar with that standard signal, that red ball. Mm-hmm. Turns are still permissive in that condition, but at a location where we see a need to prohibit a turn on red, that's where that red arrow is being implemented.
And so this is, I guess I said this was a Lincoln law, but this is a Nebraska state.
Yes, this is
anywhere in the state.
Correct. This is statewide, and so the history is that there's a national standard called the Manual for Uniform Traffic Control Devices. Okay. That's the book that says, hey, red means stop, go means go, and so in that document is where the definition for the red arrow was defined. And that actually traces back to 2012, okay. And it wasn't until this new Nebraska statute that the state law was reconciled with that national standard. So that, in simplest form, is really what that state law is doing, and that consistency will be Lincoln, Omaha, Grand Island, anywhere in the state, but then also nationally. So if you visit Chicago, go to New York, drive a rental car in Florida, that red arrow will mean the same nationally. And so this law is simply the Nebraska level of adopting and implementing that.
So, and I don't know if you know this kind of goes to the legislature side of things. Was this something that was just recently passed, like in the last session at all? Do you know?
Yes, it was the last session. So due to some of the background of the topic, LTU representatives did work with Nebraska Department of Transportation, and really it was partnering with them that helped kind of get that documented, because NDOT has engineers, Omaha has engineers, Lincoln has engineers, large communities have a wide variety of staff that saw the change with the manual, and so then it was a growing concern that, hey, we need to implement this on a state level so that we've got it defined.
So 2012, you said, was the sort of the federal.
That was that was the first reference to it in a national document that, hey, we have a red arrow, and that specifically means turns are not permitted.
So we were running a little behind in the state and getting that officially on the books.
Potentially, yes, yes.
So again, it's a statewide thing, so it doesn't matter where you are. But I guess locally here in Lincoln, where do you think this might have the biggest impact? Because there's a number of intersections that will have these red arrows, but where do you think maybe some of the bigger ones are?
Yes, so for most intersections, there will be no change to drivers. So, we like to, kind of ease drivers into change and, adoption of things. So drivers are most likely to encounter a red arrow in our downtown roadway network. So your one-way to one-ways. So examples of that would be like a northbound left at 17th and Q. We have a red arrow prohibiting a left on red. Again, one-way to one-way. 9th and Q, there's a right red arrow. And so, again, eastbound to go south on 9th Street. Can't turn red at that location. But then there's also locations throughout town that are a little more sporadic where you might encounter a red arrow. One example would be a T intersection such as 84th and Vine. Again, that eastbound direction, we've got a right red arrow to prohibit right turns at that location.
And so what goes into... again, because the red arrow is what this applies to, but just the red regular light, you can still turn right on red.
Correct, yes.
Or one way going to a one way, you can turn left on.
Yes.
So what goes into the decision as to whether or not to put one of the arrow signals versus just a regular one?
Yes, so at LTU, safety is a top priority. It's paramount, and so really we're looking at an intersection where maybe due to specific factors like it's a busy cross street, or there's not big gaps, or maybe drivers trying to make a turn on red they can't see far enough to safely make that maneuver, and so we do have a preference to keep the red ball to permit right turns on red as much as possible. But then it's the instances where we start to see the crash data come in terms of, okay, we're seeing people maybe make questionable pulls out into traffic, or there's some other factor that makes it less safe. And so that's where we are selectively implementing the red arrows to inform drivers, hey, wait the 30 seconds, you'll get your green shortly, and then safely make the maneuver.
So, maybe a little tangential here, but then that crash data, how often does that kind of get reviewed then? There's, Lincoln's growing, there's new intersections, and maybe, again, like you said, you just want to start with the regular right, or the red arrow, or red light. So how often does that crash data kind of get reviewed? Is that like a yearly process you guys go through?
So there's a couple different avenue streams. So we have done like a larger citywide crash study, and that is available on our website, so lincoln.ne.gov/traffic. And so that shows kind of the high level summaries of maybe our highest crash locations, but then also what are the detailed specifics of that. Traffic engineering does have access to the LPD crash data, and so very quickly if we get a citizen comment of hey, this specific intersection that we have concern that there's a safety issue there, we do have that data to make that quick investigation. We'll look at it. There's several standards that we then run that data through in terms of what should we do in terms of trying to improve the safety there. So you get a bit of both. We do both the high level, big picture, kind of how's the system health across the board, but then we also have the tools to do that quick. Okay, we need to go in with a scalpel, do a quick assessment, in response to citizen comment or some other topic that comes up.
Yeah. Okay. And so one of the other questions, because sometimes there's just the red. Sometimes it's the red arrow, but there's also some signage.
Yep.
That I feel like is also available to you guys as well. That
Correct.
Specifically says, "Hey, don't turn right on red." It's on the red arrow. So, will we see more of that, or I guess?
Sure.
How is that going to be implemented?
So with signing, you will still see some signs, and the text will read "No turn on red." That will be limited to where we can't, due to the lane configuration in terms of, say, it's a shared through right as opposed to a standalone exclusive right turn, or same would be for left turn. So locations where, if there's shared lanes, you'll still see that "No turn on red" sign, but when there's an exclusive right or an exclusive left turn lane, that's where you'll see the red arrow implemented.
Okay.
So And the red arrow, in terms of why we won't adopt and just sign everything, no turn on red, is signal heads are mounted on poles. And so with that, they are a physical structure. And so they have a finite weight and capacity. And so the more weight we put on there, the beefier they have to be. That impacts cost. And so signals become more expensive. But then also things like wind loading or just vehicles driving under. I mean, we all know windy days in Nebraska. As a meteorologist, you probably see that.
It's bouncing.
You see that bounce, and so there's an incentive to try to minimize that loading. But then, in conjunction with that, there's widespread research that if you put too much up for drivers, so too many signals, too many signs, drivers can have difficulty trying to deciphering all that quickly. And so there's an incentive to try to as concisely and clearly communicate here's what a driver should or should not do. And so that's where the red arrow is a tool to that ends of it's a very clear distinction of, okay, if you see the red arrow, you can't make the turn there. But if it's the standard red ball, it's kind of business as it has been, as drivers will be familiar with.
So as we kind of wrap things up here, the new law went into effect last week, July 19th. Is there any plans, I guess, in the short term? And again, you already mentioned it, but you guys go through the data. Any plans in maybe the short term to maybe add some of these additional red arrows around town at all?
So traffic engineering has been very proactive in terms of the crash review and analysis. So we have no new locations that we intend to implement the red arrow, because if we've seen that crash data, we've already gone in and we've addressed that. Okay. And so with the state statute, it will now simply bring that consistency across the board of, hey, if you encounter a red arrow in Omaha, Lincoln, Cincinnati, okay, this is location, I need to not make a red turn, and that there's an engineering basis that went into that, behind that.
Okay. All right, and I know we talked about this beforehand. I know I don't necessarily want to speak for LPD, and I know you don't either, but maybe they'll give a little bit of a grace period here as this new law just gets started. But I mean, if you do get pulled over, this might be one of the reasons why now. Got to stop on the right arrow, on the red arrow. Can't turn right, can't turn left. But
yeah, no, our mission in engineering is to, again, create designs that are intuitive, and it's my thought process that when you create intuitive driving behavior, that creates predictable driving behavior, and when you have predictable driving behavior, hey, what are the vehicles doing around me? How do I proceed safely? And that creates safer roads. But then also education. So I appreciate this opportunity to talk with you and kind of give an introduction in terms of what this means for drivers and get the message out there in terms of how they need to navigate our streets and network.
Yeah, half the battle sometimes is just getting the information out there. Again, like I said at the very beginning, I kind of felt bad. I work in the news business, and I didn't even know this was happening until really the week that it was happening. So again, I'm sure for a lot of people, they were probably like, oh, okay, this is new. I didn't remember seeing about this, but it is in effect now. Again, almost a week now that it's been in effect. And again, David, I have punched up here the LTU traffic website. Again, if people want more information on this, on any number of things, this is a great resource for them to go to.
Yes, absolutely.
I was just digging into it earlier, and they even had it was like the most driven streets. Like you guys did the car count, like on each street. Yep.
Yeah, we
which
do.
I thought was fascinating.
We do recurring counts at most of our signalized locations, and then special upon request as we see an operational something we need to dig into. We have the tools to get that data, and then we regroup as a team and say, hey, what do we need to do here?
All right. Well, David, again, I really appreciate you coming in. Again, it's an interesting topic, and again, like we just mentioned, one that people need to know about. Is there anything else you just wanted to slip in there before we let everyone go?
Yeah, no, there's lots of exciting things happening within traffic engineering, so I'm sure the public will hear more about our Vision Zero initiative that's just starting to kick off in terms of building out that plan. That's a data-driven approach to identifying things that make our streets and network safer, again, from all angles in terms of pedestrians, cyclists, drivers. But then, in the last year, we implemented our first PHB, our pedestrian hybrid beacon on North 48th Street. And so, signs from that are very promising. And so we're looking to add that as a tool to, for other locations. And then we continue to do, our safe routes to school and school zone standards. And then, Lincoln's always growing, so there's always new developments and plans that are coming in. And so supporting that.
That's going to be the other thing. Is the school zones are going to start popping back up again.
They will, yes.
All right. Well, David, appreciate your time as always. Really insightful stuff. So appreciate you taking the time to come in and join us. Appreciate everyone for tuning in and joining us as always. Again, our once a month chat. Words are hard sometimes. Once a month chat with Lincoln Transportation and Utility. So again, we'll talk to them again next month. And again, who knows? Maybe it'll be about school zone and school zone enforcement. I'm not sure, but appreciate everyone for tuning in and watching. As always, keep it tuned to 1011, both on air and online, for all of your latest news, weather, and sports.